Greetings, adventurer, and welcome to the Elder Scrolls Library. My name is Aurelius, your lore master, and today we are reading and discussing The Brothers of Darkness. The book The Brothers of Darkness appears in 4 of the Elder Scrolls games: Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Elder Scrolls Online. This book tells us a brief history of the Dark Brotherhood and how they came into existence out of the Morag Tong. Let's get into The Brothers of Darkness. The Brothers of Darkness by Palarni Assi. As their name suggests, the Dark Brotherhood has a history shrouded in obfuscation. Their ways are secret to those who are not themselves brothers of the Order. Brother is a generic term. Some of their deadliest assassins are female, but they are often called brothers as well. How they continue to exist in shadow but be easily found by those desperate enough to pay for their services is not the least of the mysteries surrounding them. The Dark Brotherhood sprang from a religious order, the Morag Tong, during the Second Era. The Morag Tong were worshippers of the Daedra spirit Mephala, who encouraged them to commit ritual murders. In their early years, they were as disorganized as only obscure cultists could be. There was no one to lead the band, and as a group, they dared not murder anybody of any importance. This changed with the rise of the Night Mother. All leaders of the Morag Tong, and then afterward the Dark Brotherhood, have been called the Night Mother. Whether the same woman, if it is even a woman, has commanded the Dark Brotherhood since the Second Era is unknown. What is believed is that the original Night Mother developed an important doctrine of the Morag Tong. The belief that while Mephala does grow stronger with every murder committed in her name, certain murders were better than others. Murders that came from hate pleased Mephala more than murders committed because of greed. Murders of great men and women pleased Mephala more than murders of relative unknowns. We can approximate the time this belief was adopted with the first known murder committed by the Morag Tong. In the year 324 of the Second Era, the potentate Vercellus Shai was murdered in his palace in what is today the Elsewhere Kingdom of Senchal. In a brash move, the Night Mother announced the identity of the murderers by painting Morag Tong on the walls in the potentate's own blood. Previous to that, the Morag Tong existed in relative peace, more or less like a witch's coven, occasionally persecuted but usually ignored. In remarkable synchronicity, at a time when Tamriel the Arena was a fractured land, the Morag Tong was outlawed throughout the continent. Every sovereign gave the cult's elimination his highest priority. Nothing more was officially heard of them for 100 years. It is more difficult to date the era when the Morag Tong re-emerged as the Dark Brotherhood, especially as other guilds of assassins have sporadically appeared throughout the history of Tamriel. The first mention of the Dark Brotherhood that I have found is from the journals of the Blood Queen Arlamahera of Hagath. She spoke of slaying her enemies by her own hand, or, if necessary, with the help of the Night Mother and her Dark Brotherhood, the secret arsenal my family has employed since my grandfather's time. Arlamahera wrote this in 2E412, so one can surmise that the Dark Brotherhood had been in existence since at least 360, if her grandfather had truly made use of them. The important distinction between the Dark Brotherhood and the Morag Tong was that the Brotherhood was a business as much as it was a cult. Rulers and wealthy merchants used the order as an assassin's guild. The Brotherhood gained the obvious rewards of a profitable enterprise, as well as the secondary benefit that rulers could no longer actively persecute them. They were needed. They were purveyors of an essential commodity. Even an extremely virtuous leader would be unwise to mistreat the Brotherhood. Not long after Arlamahera's journal entry came perhaps the most famous series of executions in the history of the Dark Brotherhood. The Colovian Emperor Potentate, Severian Korak, and every one of his heirs were murdered on one bloody night in Sun's Dawn in 430. Within a fortnight, the Clovian dynasty crumbled to the delight of its enemies. For over 400 years, until the advent of the warrior emperor Tiber Septim, chaos reigned over Tamriel. Though no comparably impressive executions have been recorded, the Brotherhood must have grown fat with gold during that interregnum. The Dark Brotherhood has an interesting origin, one that I was even a little incorrect on before this video. The Dark Brotherhood is the modern Assassin's Guild, but their origin began in the Morag Tong. According to the account in the book, the Dark Brotherhood came from the Morag Tong during the Second Era. The Morag Tong is the OG Assassin's Guild, though for much of their existence they were led more by religious fanaticism, worshipping Mephala, the Daedric Prince of Murder, Lies, and Deception. Unorganized at first, they eventually became a well-structured organization led by the Night Mother. The Night Mother has been the title of all of the leaders of the Morag Tong, and then the Dark Brotherhood after them. Some speculation even exists that it may be the same woman who has led them the whole time. This is most likely not the case, but an interesting idea nonetheless. The original Night Mother is believed to have developed an important doctrine. Essentially, the greater the murder, the greater Mephala becomes. As the book states, murders that came from hate pleased Mephala more than those that came from greed. Murders of those who were greater and more prominent in society pleased Mephala more than those of the unknown. The first time we really see this playing out is with the assassination of the potentate Versidu Shai, who was murdered in his palace in Senshal in Elsewhere. This took place in 2E324 and marked the first time the Morag Tong publicly took credit for a murder. They did so by writing Morag Tong on the wall in Versidu Shai's own blood. The Morag Tong was soon after outlawed throughout the continent. Nothing was heard from them for over a century, now with the new name, the Dark Brotherhood. The earliest mention of the Dark Brotherhood came from a journal entry from the Blood Queen Arlamahera of Hagath. Arlamahera was one of two wives of Ar-Azal, the High King of Hammerfell. In 2E412, Arlamahera wrote in one of her journals that she often employed a group known as the Dark Brotherhood to kill many of her enemies. She refers to the Night Mother and the Dark Brotherhood as a secret weapon that has been used since her grandfather. Assuming this to be true, the Dark Brotherhood has been active since at least 2E360. One of the principal differences in the transition from Morag Tong to Dark Brotherhood is the Dark Brotherhood is ran more like a business. While there are still Daedric and religious undertones to a lot of things, they really leaned into being pure assassins and making money. With the lack of weird cult vibes, they became more employable and well-known. So much so that the book tells us that they had become somewhat of a necessity, an organization that couldn't be easily shut down, and it would be dangerous to do so. The book concludes with what it refers to as the most famous series of executions in Dark Brotherhood history. The Clovian Emperor Potentate Severian Korak was murdered along with all of his heirs in a single night. With that, the Clovian dynasty crumbled, leading to over 4 centuries of turmoil, leading to the rise of Tiber Septim. While the Dark Brotherhood may not have had another day as successful as this, the resulting time of chaos saw them grow fat with gold during the interregnum. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me what you think about this book in the comments below. And may the blessings of the 8 Divines be upon you.